And hello, everybody! Alrighty, so how's everybody doing? Alright, so here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to show you the debug menu as it is right now, but I'm also going to showcase the cutting room floor site in conjunction with this. So, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome to my live stream. My name is Victor Hale, and I am here to showcase to you all the full benefits of the debug menu that you can see in the PAL version, the US version, which is what I'm showing you right now, and the Japanese version, which will be showcased later. So, let's begin. As you can see, the menu over to the side here, you can see Game, Event, System, Visualize, Display, Sound, and Card File. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth into the options with all the other ones before we touch the game part. So without further ado, let's begin. Now right here you see Edit Flags. The flags that are displayed for each map will change per chapter, as well as the amount. As you can see, this page is not entirely full. The next few pages have nothing in them except for page 5 and page 6. Most of these are in Japanese because the debug menu, of course, was created in the Japanese version. But that's besides the point. The flags that are on display here are GF Cancelled, GF Game Over, GF Complete, Triangle A and B, and I want to pay close attention to Game Over, Triangle Attack, and A and B, because technically speaking, you can't trigger the Triangle Attack no matter what you do, mainly because 2 other units haven't appeared. You can't trigger them at all as of right now because those units aren't on display here. But if you were to hack yourself to be in the test map, then you would be able to, and you would be able to show it off if you had the skill for all 3 characters. Now, those skills in particularly, I'll show them off to you, but for now, let's go over Game Over. So, Game Over is impossible in this particular level. However, Complete is. This is basically a flag that triggers when your turn is complete, when the chapter is finished, etc. Game Over technically cannot happen. It can, however, if you do one of 2 things. If Ike dies in this chapter, which is almost impossible, especially on difficult. Like, it is almost impossible to lose in this chapter. However, let's say, for example, you decide not to take the Vulnerary, or you make it so Grail or Void is basically overpowered and you stand no chance. You can get a Game Over. The flag is there. And that's about it. But here's another thing to go over. Registered functions does nothing. Messages, however, right here. You can't really do anything, but here's every single kind of message you can find in the game. Although you can't really see them. These are basically just MA Boss, MA Cancel, MA Heal, Near, Safe, Achieve, Adjust, Animation, Auto, auto current, auto cur, auto turn end, which can be triggered, BGM and BGMX, battle camera, battle victory, and L and R camera. I'll talk about that one as well. But for now, let's move on to system. Memory usage, which triggers nothing unfortunately, though it's probably just a display thing. They probably had it so that you could view the memory, view how much memory has been utilized in the game. File usage, a similar concept, to see how many files have been utilized in this one scene. A RAM usage, a similar thing. Ident base, unsure. Connect to FIO, unknown as well. Free cells check, which does nothing. And sweep files was probably something to try to delete a mass of files while they were doing stuff. Visualize icons. Now, you might be asking yourself, these icons actually look familiar. And that's because these are every icon you can find in the game. And if you scroll down to the bottom middle, all the way down to the bottom near the middle, you can see the Sonic Sword and a bow. That bow is known as the Bright Bow, and you can see its icon right there. But what's interesting is right here. You can see a coin symbol right here, and then 5 other icons right here. The reason why this is interesting is because, technically speaking, through the debug menu, you actually can't have claws appear. Like when you go through the items list, the claws don't appear unless they're on the unit. So you won't be able to see them normally, but it appears to be that they actually go further than the actual unit. But if you look upward, right here, this is a sprite for the Gugurant, Ragnell, and most importantly, the Wishblade here. But even more importantly, where my mouse is at, you can actually find Grail's iconic axe, known as Irvon. That's because all of these are technically in the game, but they're kind of hard to access unless you utilize cheat codes or hacking. But anyway, that lance that I'm hovering over is also known as the Heavy Spear. That's the specific spear that's given to Devdin that allows it to pierce armor units. So yeah. But if you look at this icon section here, you can kind of see how everything goes chronologically. Like right here, this is the equip symbol. This displays whenever you equip an item. It's just a simple E. But right here is interesting. This is the symbol for the Heaven Affinity. Boon, seemingly next. This is the skill for Dragon that allows you to heal units that are adjacent to you and return them back to normal. Like if they're poisoned, or if they're poisoned, if they're burning, if they're stunned, etc. This one right here, I believe, is the Water Affinity, the Fire Affinity, Dark. Actually, no, that one's Light. That one's Dark. Then that's Fire, Wind, and I believe Earth Affinity? No, I think so. So clearly the heavy influence of Affinity was put into place before all this other stuff was happening. This symbol right here, the cross swords, is, I believe that's a symbol for sword units, but I forget which kind it is. This one right here is interesting though. This is claw. This is a claw symbol. I believe this is the standard claw, while this one is effectiveness bonus for horseback. Then there's this symbol. I believe this is a skill, or yeah, I think it's a skill actually. Now that I think about it, it appears next to one of them that's called a Mess Help Impregnable. But yeah. Oh, and this one is effectiveness against dragons. Actually, no, I remember. Effective against Lagoos, effective against horseback, effective against knights, effective against dragons, and effective against flyers. And I think this is effective against armored and knights, possibly, unless this is something else. But weapon types here: sword, lance, axe, bow, staves, whatever. These are all the types of weapons you can use in the game, while all these right here are status afflictions. Aside from this one right here, and I believe all these ones right here, these might be, I forget what these are now that I think about it, but I know most of the other stuff. However, these kind of baffle me. I think these are kind of, button things. Now, as for the rest of these items, if you look right here, this is a symbol for Lumina. What's Lumina? Well, Lumina is a skill given to priests that you can apply to sages that allows both mages, sages, and priests and bishops. It allows them to utilize light magic. But the way that it's handled is that the light magic is the same level as your staff level. So for example, sages, the highest level they can get in their staffs is B. Next up, but like I mentioned before, however, mages and sages, priests and bishops, or rather just bishops, all three of those classes can use Lumina, and I can show you how. So, if we exit out of here, skill icons. As you can see right here, this is literally every type of skill that you can find in the game. But if you scroll right over here to the right, then you can see these empty skill slots that might have been something else in development, or they're just like scrapped concept for once, or they display whenever a skill that's, whenever there's no skill happening, yada yada yada. But anyway, what you'll find here is kind of interesting though. The first skill you see on this list is actually Adept, with Nihil being next and Wrath being next. But if you scroll all the way down here, you can see Ether and Colossus were the last ones made here. Which implies which implies exactly what you can think of. Colossus was basically one of the last skills made in development, and this kind of proves it. There's also another reason as to why that is, but if you want to watch more info on it, I suggest you watch Bigklingy's Path of Radiance run. Alrighty, here we go. We're back. Sorry about that. That was my battery running low. Okay, so as you can see right here, you got the Insight scroll, the Vigilance scroll, Ether, and Colossus. The reason why this is interesting is because it implies that all of those skills right there were made after development. But it's also more interesting that you see that scroll right here, but you see this one right over here as well. Actually, now that I think about it, it actually makes sense. Because Ether as a skill requires you to have Sol and Luna back and forth. And it triggers them at the same time. So maybe they had to get the Sol port first, which is right over here. And then they had to, right over here. Then they had to get the Luna part, which is this part right over here, or vice versa. Could be either or. But anyway, so we'll go back to visualize, and this is the dialogue background. Now, what can you do in the dialogue background here? Basically, all it does is just, it allows you to see every type of background you can find in the game. For example, ever notice how Bigklingy will show you a black background of a character in his videos? This is possibly how he does it, or it could be something else entirely. But that's one thing. But here's something interesting. This background. Now, in Bigklingy's video, he goes over unused content, and one of them is this screen right here, which hints at a demo release of Path of Radiance. The other thing you might notice, however, is look at the numbering of every background. Right here specifically, the Japanese version of the GBA link up, while this is the English version. Now, I don't know myself too much Japanese. In fact, I don't know a lot. But I know that in the GBA link up for the Japanese version, you can actually click on, they probably added a feature to, they added a feature that allowed you to link up with Sacred Stones, Blazing Sword, and Binding Blade. So, knowing that, we can move on to the next available ones. Interesting that some of these are appearing right now, when some of these other ones are appearing later on as well. But let's go to the very first screen that we can find in this message board. Right here. This actually makes sense, because these are the starting photos of the Grail Mercenaries location. This is their fort. So the first background they probably made was this one, with the last one being this one. But yeah. Anyway, VI adjustment. Now, VI adjustment, I don't know too clearly about VNI or whatever, but from what I can see here, it shows vertical, horizontal, and brightness. If I use the C-stick, I can make the brightness high, or I can make it as is. If I go upward, it apparently goes only up to 815. They probably each control their own factor, but that's besides the point. Now, when you exit this with nothing boosted, you simply have to press the start button to get the screen back. And now moving. As you can see, this is basically the movies that you can see right now. This is the chapter opening. This is the opening movie. This is chapter 1. You get the drift. These are the movies for each chapter. But here's something interesting with chapter 6. Now, chapter 6, or rather 6. Well, actually, no. This is not chapter 1. Okay, so... Okay, I realized what my mistake here. 1 is prologue, 2 is chapter 1, 3 is chapter 2, 5 is chapter 4, 6 is chapter 5, and 8 is chapter 7. What's so special about chapter 5, though? So, you just saw the movie where Mist shows off her medallion, which is very significant. Um, anyway, just try to mind. Anyway, that little video is significant because Mist is showing off the medallion, but it'll glow again in chapter 8. This is S08 though, and that's the end of the game though. Now this I actually want to show off right here. So, display. When I hit the process tree, what it shows is everything that's currently happening right now. E-flash, E-wipe, force fade, etc. Here's performance. If you look down at the bottom left here, you can see what's being detailed in this little debug menu. It says CPU 3D, CPU 2D, game total, and GP done. This is performance. Now, what's Prim 2D? What's interesting is, well, actually, now that I think about it, I'm not too sure. GP performance. Actually, I can answer my own question. I forgot about that. Okay, so I'm just gonna look right here. Right here. Process tree. Displays a chart along the left side of the screen which tracks all system processes that are currently happening. Performance. Displays a chart which tracks CPU performance. Prim 2D. Displays a chart on the bottom of the screen which tracks, even there, not sure. GP performance, however, displays a chart in the top right corner of the screen which supposedly tracks graphic processing, but no longer seems to respond to anything. But essentially, if you look right over here, you can see triangles, cold and scissored, but essentially, yeah. Anyway, debug info. Now this one I find kind of interesting because unknown use. It does not seem to display anything right now, but I know that in the, I think it's the PAL version, there's a code which displays debug info. If I remember correctly, there is a way to access it for the PAL version, which can show you a lot of cool things. But that's the PAL version, so let's move on. Anyway, safety frame, or the Japanese text that you see right here, seems to be it just displays a white frame marking the safe areas for TV display, most likely pertaining to visual quality. Anyway, freaking cars. Anyway, sound test. Now, to go into the sound test, I'm going to show you the actual sound test. See that menu over here on the side? Here we go. When you click on the sound test, it appears right over here. The sound test shows which sounds are playing right now. BGM map cut 1. Now cut, of course, referring to the cut version of the song. There's 3 different cuts apparently. But environment and song, you can see right here in the SFX. But if you look closely at the SFX right over here, you can see cancel. Alright, so when the company, so you'll notify me, the company, but for now just let them know that a company is going to handle the people problem. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Hey there. Oh, okay. Good to know. You're welcome. Oh, okay. Okay. Had to take care of a phone call, but now we're all good. So, if you want to turn off the sound test or ever, you can't go into the sound test menu. You instead have to turn it off right here. Now, battle off. Battle off completely disables all combat animations and automatically skips to the end of attacks. It does not affect stabs or shoving. Now, technically, you don't really need to do any battle off thing or whatever. You can technically do that through the sub-menu that's not the debug menu. And if you ever play with the debug menu, you'll notice that when you press B and Z to activate it, all you need to do is press Z onward. So all you have to do is press the Z button from then on. But if you want to get rid of that, you can do a save state, click the Z button, and you'll go into the options menu to control the speed of whatever, the speed of the battles, speed of the text, the animations, etc. Now, guide window. It toggles the controller help display in the bottom right corner of the screen. But what's interesting is, there it is. There's nothing there. Now, if I click on this, camera setting, game camera, toggles the camera between 2 modes. Game camera mode, which is how it normally does, and debug camera mode, which allows you to basically utilize the debug camera. Essentially puts you in the same mode as when the developers were utilizing the camera to get the fullest extent of it. So here's a good example. Hello? Gotcha. As you can see, when I toggle to the debug camera, I can make the screen be 2D, basically, a more frontal view. This actually can allow certain people to view the entire area in a 2D-like image, almost like GBA games. And in fact, I believe you can take the camera out of the skybox. Anyway, it can also give a 3D view of the events. So for example, now you can see the trees. You can see a total 3D view of things, but you can also do a pseudo 3D like this one, so to speak, which is how it's normally done. But now we go over to this area here. Skip display of prohibited segments. It doesn't do anything as of right now, but probably whenever something was not able to be seen, they made this feature so that they could skip past the flags and be able to do stuff like that. But debug console. It doesn't do anything as of right now, but I believe this is probably handled by something else that's currently not available right now. But anyway, whenever you click on card file, card file seems to do nothing except this. You can see it graying out for a second and then going back to nothing. But now that we're here, let's go to the game section. So, in this area right here, you can check the unit, go to its settings, go to game settings, and toggle with the enemy, other, and partner characters that are displayed as of right now. You can edit the turn that's happening. You can edit the bonus experience. You can edit the funds. And whenever you edit both of them, this gives you the total of the amount. You can edit the chapter. Well, actually, no, you can't. But only in the American version and the PAL version, you can toggle between Maniac, Easy, Normal, Hard, and Maniac. But technically, Maniac isn't a thing. So, allow me to reiterate. You see, Maniac is a setting, but it wasn't fully removed. When you toggle Maniac, you get a lot of easy mode specific stuff. And here's how you know. When I toggled between Maniac mode on this level specifically and onward, what it did was in Chapter 5, it's normally a Fog of War map. In Easy mode, however, it's a route chapter, it's a defend chapter, basically. There's no Fog of War, there's nothing there. When I set it to Maniac for Chapter 5, it did the first type. It was Easy mode. Now that brings me to one other thing. Maniac and Easy. In the Japanese version, Maniac mode was a specific mode that was essentially Lunatic mode. Think Radiant Dawn hard mode, but not as hard as Radiant Dawn, thankfully. Easy replaced it. In the Japanese version, the only modes that were available were Normal, Hard, and Maniac. But in the English version, they got Easy. Easy essentially is a region-specific mode that was integrated for the US version and the PAL version that people will tell you about. But here's where things get kind of interesting as well. Level Up. Level Up essentially determines fixed mode or random mode. Whenever you beat the game, you can be given... okay, so let me just give a good scenario. Boyd right there, in the next chapter, will have a fighter's band and a vulnerary. What the fighter's band does is it basically raises specific stats catered to his class, and it allows anyone who uses it to adjust to basically make those stats better and better and better. It basically focuses on those. This is apparent in every version of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Whenever you have fixed mode, you automatically will have that, so to speak. Also, I was wrong before, that was Earth Affinity, what I thought was Boon. But anyway, you go back to here, and while Tricky Terrain does nothing right now, maybe it was something specific to terrain, but now that we're at this section, though, Tricky Terrain, unknown use. The Japanese text right there, however, is open roof. Now, it has nothing right now, but as pointed out right here, when the cursor is on a visible building, it plays the door closing animation. Otherwise, it's grayed out and unselectable, and the command says there is no roof. Instead, judging by the command's name, it also opens up rooms with closed roofs. But the only roofs it actually affects are the ones in the test map. All roofs in the main game don't respond to the command at all. So, in other words, it's specific to the test map, not any other level. Building. As pointed out in the open roof segment here, when you're on a building or like some kind of visible object or whatever, it'll showcase this. Tree 02. A specific type of tree. It does nothing right now, but Tree 01. Whenever you're on an object that's displayed in the game, the building will highlight what it is you're hovering over. So they probably use this as an identifier. Convoy. This, you can't adjust the convoy on the fly. But when you have anything in a convoy, then it will display how many items are in the convoy as of right now. Right now, there's 0. But when we get to Chapter 8, it's going to display at least 1, maybe 2, 4 or 8 objects. And whatever you drop into the convoy, the number adds up. So basically, this was just to keep track of how many items were in your convoy out of the available 200. Unit list seemingly does nothing as of right now, but I'll bet you that it displays this. Well, no, not that one. I was actually thinking of something else, but... Oh, I know! Okay, so, whenever you're in the convoy, a base, or something, whenever you're in the convoy, the base, or the preparations menu, pressing the X button displays the unit list. See, it does nothing right now, but seemingly that's what that function was originally used for. Now, Bond is actually kind of interesting. It does nothing, but I'll bet you they used that for supports. We don't know for sure, but that's our best guess. Aside from that, however, there's also the log. As of right now, it does nothing. Even if I click on it, it does nothing. Most likely, when you click on it, it probably did something else. Now, I could click on this clear map. And if I click on the clear map, then it'll clear the map. It does it. It does it tremendously well. However, let's say I was fighting the Black Knight. Clearing the Knight would essentially make it so that Nasir would die. And that has happened to me in my Maniac playthrough. So let's skip that and let's go over to Ike. So, general doping. If I click on this, it makes all of his stats maxed out. Except for base HP. That's the only thing that doesn't get changed. As you can see, so that's general doping. Parameters is where the fun begins. So I can go to base HP and adjust it, or turn it back to normal. Seemingly, they use this to test out the parameters of every unit. The first one being the level, the experience, your max HP, the HP, strength, magic, skill, speed, luck, defense, resistance. Now this is interesting. Constitution. See this weight down here? If I change this, then what happens is it'll move the weight as well. Move is movement. Beast technically can't be utilized by Ike and some of the others. But for Lagoose, this meter is their beast meter, essentially. A Lagoose is set to a certain amount of Lagoos are set to a certain amount of Lagoos beast meter. That the amount that it's set on is essentially how closer they are to transforming or detransforming. Hate is unknown. It seemingly does nothing. Maybe it was this part of the chaos feature. I don't know. Biorhythm is, you guessed it, biorhythm. Set it to 99 and he's in the best biorhythm ever. And wait, but you know. Conditions is interesting. If I set it to 1, it gives him that condition, as noted right here. Sleep, silence, shock, paralysis. Now, M shield is kind of interesting. It does nothing right now. But as you can see right here, torch. What I think if everybody's played a Fog of War, you know exactly what torch is. Essentially, is a flag that's triggered when you utilize a torch item. Lights up an area whenever it's foggy or dark. Now, here's where things get interesting. 77. It has nothing right here. But if we go over to the skill display over here, right here, SID event class change. What this does is prevents class changing. Ike, Soth, and Volk essentially have a skill that forces them to not be able to become a lord or become an assassin. If I remove this, then watch what happens. He can finally gain EXP and become a lord in this very chapter if I wanted to. 92 is kind of interesting though. Technically, he has it too. So if I give 92 to Ike and Grail, what it does is it essentially prevents a game over from either of them. But I don't like that because I know that I'm not going to lose with this. Weapon level though. This is where the hilarity begins. Remember what I said about Lumina? And how if you attach that skill to a sage or a mage or whatever, you can basically make him S-ranked in all three of the magic skills? Well, look right here. You're gonna laugh your ass off as soon as I'm done showing you. Reserve guard, housekeeping speaking. Doing good yourself. Just let him in. Sounds good. Thank you very much, sir. Alright. So, ready to see the hilarity? That's right! Despite the fact that Ike does not have the ability to utilize spells, all three of these can be accessed! Developers, you are crazy sons of bitches! But yes! But here's like the perfect way to utilize this. So, you give Ike the class for Ranger, but you make his model Soren or somebody else. You'll love this. That model will essentially be able to fuck over everybody else and just go mad with hilarity. And what I mean by that is, when I adjust if I were to force the model for Ike to be a mage, sage, or a bishop, then all of these spells can be utilized. No joke, he'll be able to utilize fire, thunder, and wind. However, staff has a restriction. You have to force that person to have the skill number 40, which then allows them to utilize staffs, as you can see right here. But you might be wondering, what's all of this? Well, Knife essentially makes it so that you can utilize knives as a unit. This is given to Thieves and Sages. Thieves and Sages can utilize knives. So if you want to give them that type of weapon, then you can do that. However, Lumina is the standout. So how does Lumina work? Now, I talked about this earlier, but Lumina has to coincide with skill 40. When that happens, you essentially make it so that Ike can utilize a staff, but allows the wielder to utilize light magic. That staff symbol that you see right here next to the sword, that's given to people who are specifically utilizing Lumina here. Anyone who utilizes Lumina and is able to utilize staves will have a light symbol underneath the staff as an indicator that they can utilize light magic that has the same weapon level as their staffs. So, now this is also very interesting. Let's go over the other skills. So, Discipline allows this unit to control strength while training. Now I have a code that makes it so that every unit has 50 capacity, and this version of Boyd will not die. But as you can see right here, I can edit him too. So if I want to max him out, I can. If I go to items, I can even change his weapons and their weapons. So, what's so significant about changing an enemy's items? Well, this is where the fun part begins. What you're seeing is correct, folks. I can steal that axe! I can legit do that. It's amazing. But that's only through the debug menu. Anyway. He can technically utilize that thing as well. But what I can do is this. That's right. I could give this little girl Radiance right from the beginning. I think we're good now. So, and here we go! Lord Ike on the prologue chapter, everybody! Now, funny that he becomes an other unit at that point. Now, Ike, I mean Grill. Let's go over stat totals. So, 26, 20, 27, 28, 40, 24, 22. Ike, almost the exact same Actually, yeah. The exact same stats. So you might be wondering, why is that? Well, Ike's class is technically a hero, but they removed the ability for him to use Axis intentionally. And here's why. Right here in the making of Path of Radiance. Lord Swords. Lord of Swords. They always planned for Ike to be a Sword Lord from the very beginning. However, down the development, they decided to go a different route and make him a Ranger instead of making him a Lord right from the start. So they went with Ranger and made it so that he evolved into Lord. How they did this was interesting. Grail's class was made before he was. In fact, if you saw the visualized area, you saw that the Heaven Affinity was the first affinity we saw in that icon chart, which meant that maybe he was being created before Ike was. What's even more interesting is that his caps are the exact same, and if you look right here, he has an A rank in swords and an S rank in lance and axis. So, what happens if I remove discipline and give the both of them ether? You'll see that both of them can use it. What's even more interesting is skills. So, want to know how broken the debug menu is? Look no further than right here. So, oh boy. So, time to show off how broken this entire thing is. So, skill 7. Allows him to utilize Gurgorots. Where's the game trainer though? Skill number 3. What does it do? If you look up at his movement there, and let's give it to Ike as well for starters. So, Yep! Ladies and gentlemen, the Night Ring. This is the skill given to horseback units to do Kanto. Oh. There. So yeah, this is skill 3 is given to horsebacks and flyers so that they can utilize Kanto and basically use the rest of their movement to go somewhere else. And now, the infamous glitch. Iron sword, iron sword, iron sword, iron sword. Look at all those swords! Oh yeah! Another thing about skills. Number 2, higher. This is given to second tiers. So, what do these other skills do? For that, we go to right here. So, skill number 13, also known as the bargain skill. If anyone's played Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, they know exactly what bargain does. The bargain skill essentially makes it so that whenever you enter a base, it makes it so that everything is 50%. However, throughout the years, instead of giving it to a skill, they made that an item. And the item just so happens to be the silver card, which you get in Radiant Dawn, but it's either time or they didn't want to use it in this game just yet. But essentially, it makes it so that you can. It doesn't act. That thing's kind of misleading. A special card that brings the bearer bargains galore at shops. Now, the description, however, is a nod to the bargain skill from Fire Emblem 4. But essentially, it's an item version of the skill. Put it in the convoy or the base or whatever, and it makes it so that everything is half price. And you could do it in Radiant Dawn too if you wanted to. Make it so that it's permanent. So, that's one thing. But, on to why I removed the... now, here's why I got rid of number 3, basically, which makes it so that it cantos. The reason why is right here. The Night Ring. Anyone who's played this game knows how rare this is, in a way. Whenever you beat the Chapter 19 without killing any of the Ravens, you get this, as an item. However, this only works on foot soldiers, Lagoos, and a few others. But you can't use it on, well, you can, but it's useless. You can give it to anybody, but you don't need to give it to horseback and the flyers, because they already have the skill embedded into their coding. So you don't need to give it to them. But this item makes it so that anybody can use it. So, item placement. So, how does it work? Well, by this you would think that the iron sword was actually the first sword ever made, but according to the Japanese version, or at the very least action replay codes, the slim sword is actually the first one made here. But you get the iron sword right after you beat the prologue. You're given the trainer sword, and you can use it now, but it's useless because the iron sword is basically the same thing. The slim sword, of course, is given to Marcia when she's introduced in Chapter 3. Steel sword, silver sword, iron blade, silver blade, venom edge, regal sword, which you get later, is the rapier for Ike, basically. However, unlike in previous games... Okay, yep. I knew it. So... that horseback is very misleading there. It says knight. What it actually means is horseback. Armor, of course, referring to armor knights. But anyway, this is given to him later. Brave sword, Vekati, which is the S-ranked sword weapon. Killing edge, which anybody who's played a GBA game knows how well this goes with assassins. Armor Slayer, which, from the original game too. Lagoo Slayer, which is basically the Lagoo's effectiveness against Lagoo's weapon. Longsword, which, funny story, Longsword right here is a horseback effectiveness item. As you can see down there, you see the horse symbol, which signifies it's a horseback killer. And that's because, this is where it gets interesting, the internal name for Ike's sword is actually Longsword. This is because in an early draft of the game, as seen in a screenshot, I don't know where to find it though, you can see that one of Ike's weapons in the previous game was a longsword. But what's interesting is that the longsword in this game is given horse killer. Double bow is interesting because, well, it's the S-ranked bow, but it's in the section where you find swords. This implies that they were making the double bow at the same time that they were making all their swords. Rune sword, which is the light magic sword. Alendite, which in this game specifically is a Black Knight only weapon. Ragnell, which is an Ike only weapon. However, if you give, let's say for example, Titania, well actually no, not really Titania, but like anybody that can utilize a sword, if you give them the skill 0, it does two things. Number one, oh yeah, and Paladin Band. This is a feature in fixed mode. When it says essence of a paladin, what it means is that defense and certain other stats are the only ones that get fixed stat boosts. Next up. Oh, and in a later chapter, Ike is basically a commander, so he's given 2 commands when he gets to Chapter 8, Order and Direct. Whenever you give the skills 0 to any unit, it allows them to utilize Order, Direct, Regal Sword, and Ragnell with no hesitation except for the commands. Never use them if you're not Ike. Never use Order or Direct if you're not Ike. They will break the game because no other unit is supposed to have it. However, Ragnell and Regal Sword can be utilized by anybody. But that's one other thing. Gurgurot, as I said before, is given the 7th skill, which essentially is Ashnard's Blade, and then we get into the Lance section. Now, interesting enough, the S-ranked Lance for this game is not here. However, the Devil Axe is here. However, if you have animations turned on, it's going to crash. Also, right here, Irvon. A unique axe forged by a master craftsman. It's powerful but difficult to wield. The reason why they say difficult to wield is because they're heavy. So, ignore that. But more importantly, it's the S-ranked axe. But that's also the name of Grail's iconic axe. Now, if we go here, Stiletto, this is not only the most powerful combat knight, it has an effectiveness against armor units. When given to thieves, it can essentially make it so that you can peer through armored objects. Have a good one, sir. Now, Lagoon Stone is kind of interesting. There's 2 variants. This one, which is the most common one, and this one, which is specific to Maniac mode. Anyway, Amity, which this is interesting. This is a Lincia's blade. It's essentially an infinite use brave weapon given to her specifically. But as you can see here, I could choose it. The reason why is because, like Gurgrant and Ragnell, is tied to skill 89, which I believe is Equip B. Wishblade, which essentially is the Wishblade is the S-ranked lance of this game. Think Maltet. Of course, the Night Rain, but Ballista. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Ballista, Iron Ballista, Killer Ballista, and Onager function exactly as you think it does. So, how does it entirely work? Well, let's say Boyd and Oscar were to utilize these ballista weapons. 3 to 10 range. Your eyes are not deceiving you. These weapons give 3 to 10 range. So give these to any bow units, and you'll be able to utilize these as much as you want. If that's the only restriction. Utilize it with bow units. You need one, or you just need to put it on. Ah. You're welcome. So, but yes, like the GBA games, if you hack a ballista weapon onto a bow unit, it works exactly how it works in game. Now, of course, fire, and these are all the fire weapons, wind weapons, thunder weapons, and light weapons in the game. What's interesting, however, is you have Rex Flame, which is basically Thou Flame, but S-ranked. Then you have Rexcalibur, which is essentially Excalibur from the original games. Actually, no. It's Excalibur and Fimbulveter. Fimbulveter is essentially the Norse Reign of Ice. It's essentially the mythological event of Ragnarok, or rather the beginning of Ragnarok, where hell freezes over, essentially. Fimbulveter. Rexbolt, which is essentially Mjolnir from the original games. And Rexora, which is basically Aureola, I think. It's the S-ranked light magic tome from the GBA games. Oh, and of course, Ashura's staff. Ashura's staff is canonical to nearly every incarnation of Fire Emblem. A 3-use, everybody heals everybody's staff, basically. What's interesting, however, are these. The Berserk staff, which is completely unfinished. The Warp staff, which if given a wrist is fully functional. The Unlock staff, which I'm not sure if it works, but I know that in the next game, the Unlock staff essentially unlocks chests and doors. Now, the Ward staff raises resistance. Huh? Huh? Go ahead. So, continuing, now we go into the item section. There's 2 other weapons we can find, but I'll save that's for later. So, Lagu's Guard. If given to a unit like any Bjork, it protects against Lagus. Bjork Guard, which given to a Lagus, will essentially make it so that nothing like fire or wind or thunder can hurt the specific Lagus type. Full Guard, given to anybody, prevents all of the above from not working. Sword Band, all the way down to Thief Band here, specific to fixed mode. Essentially, like I told you before, it fixes stat boosts to 3 different, to like a specific set of stats. And then, of course, we get into our actual stat boosters: Seraphro, Energy Drop, Spirit Dust, Secret Book, etc. All these essentially boost stats. Statue Frag raises weight. Statue Frag raises your weight. Master Seal, which can be given to any unit, makes them second tier. Chest Key, Door Key, Night Ward, and this is where it gets interesting. When given to Swords, Knights, or Paladins, can... well, actually, no. It can technically be given to anybody. And here's what I mean. When you give it to anybody, and you have the 93 skill, it makes it so that defense, resistance, and speed growth is increased over time. Vulnerary, Elixir, basically those are HP healing items. Pure Water, which increases resistance. Antitoxin, which heals poison. Torch, and this is where it gets interesting. This torch is the item. Arm Scroll, which gives raises the weapon rank of any unit. However, remember what I said about the dual skills or whatever? If Titania, for instance, utilizes the Arm Scroll, whichever one becomes S rank first is forced to be an A rank when utilizing the Arm Scroll. When utilizing the Debug menu, however, it allows both of them to become S-ranked. And the fun thing is, she can technically utilize all lances and axes when you get to S-ranked. So, that's one thing you can do. Instead of using an Arm Scroll, utilize the Debug menu to get an S rank in all of your weapons. Silver Card, which I went over before, halves items by... well, it halves item prices when it's in the convoy. White Gem, which can be sold for an extremely high amount of money. Blue Gem, which is a little bit less. Red Gem, more common. Now this is where it gets interesting. The Debug menu kind of hints at this, with Elite being the skill given to every unit. However, when you give it to the base, the only 2 units that can utilize it are Astrid and Joffrey. There's one problem though. They already have it. So, it doesn't work. But, if you give it to any of your units, then it essentially increases, it of course, as everybody knows, Paragon makes it so that you can increase bonus experience. No, weapon experience over time. Swift, which actually doesn't tell you, Swift is Sorelli. Occult, which is the mastery skill, is the mastery skills. It essentially allows you to it gives every unit their mastery skill. Resolve, which anybody who's played this game knows Wrath and Resolve. Impregnable, which basically makes it so that you can teach the impregnable skill to a unit. Temper, it doesn't say it here, but temper is essentially, I need to find it again. It's, right here, Tempest. Serenity being calm. Calm is serenity. Now, Savior, which everybody should know, pretty much all these skills everybody knows, but Horror is where it gets interesting. Allows you to teach the skill Daunt, which in this game, you only see Daunt on Ashnard. Chant, which in this game is called Canto, but in the next game, it's a different skill. I forget which one it's called, but essentially, Chant is the skill that's given to Herons, allowing them to utilize chants. But it can only be given to transformed Herons, because in this game, it can only be given to transformed Herons, which, if you're in the base, the only way you can be transformed in the base is if you give a Laguz the Laguz band, which you'll see in a moment. Now, like I said before, there are two weapons. The Sonic Sword, which is the wind magic sword that we get later in the game, and the Bright Bow, an arcane bow that uses light magic, not strength, to attack. It's 1 to 2 range. It's fully programmable, and I believe in the player's guide, they even have a picture of it. So, this essentially, when given to an archer, allows them to attack 1 to 2 range, and it utilizes magic, so that's kind of a bonus. Frac 9. Now this is interesting. Frac 9 is Blossom. Reinforcements is only given to Tanith, but if you give it to any other unit, it summons a specific set of units on the map. So, let's say I give it to Marcia. She can trigger reinforcements on her own, but it's utilized for other units. Telegnosis, which... Oh, I remember that. That was Insight. Big Ear, which is Vigilance. Now, Insight and Vigilance are given to Janeth and Uki in the main game. But in the Japanese version, and I have tested this, in the Japanese version, Big Ear can be taught to Sephiroth and Uki, which are heavy spoilers. Renewal, which was programmed to the last minute supposedly, is essentially, if I give it to Ike, then depending on his magic-based magic, it basically auto-heals you every turn. Next up, Heavy Spear. Like I mentioned before, this is given to Devdin, but essentially it's the equivalent of the it's the equivalent of the Armor Slayer for Lance users. Next up, Demiband. When given to a Lagoose, and any Lagoose can use it, it essentially makes it so that they stay transformed, but their skills are divided by half, essentially. When given to... But, Lagoose Band. When given to a Lagoose, it's the same as the Demiband, but no restrictions, except for one. '88, which, if given to a Lagoose, if a Lagoose has skill 88, then the Lagoose Band essentially makes it for, the Lagoose Band makes it so that they stay transformed regardless. They can take it off like any other band, but if you give it to a Lagoose, then, well, you know. And then, of course, coins. They're nothing as of right now. They're only worth 1 gold. Well, that's because they are gold. But essentially, you get them in this game to use them in the next game. The next game, coins essentially give you a forging bonus. What these bonuses are: increased might, increased accuracy, increased crit rate, etc. You can even get a goddess bonus, and when that happens, the goddess bonus essentially makes it so that the goddess bonus essentially makes it so that you can get a boost in everything. Literally every type of bonus that you can get at a forger. Anyway. Owen. Alundite is specific to the Black Knight. No unit can use it except for the Black Knight in this game. But yeah. That's a good thing to go over. Now, here's where the regional differences come in. Number 1, the skills. In the US version and the PAL version, this skill, which for all intents and purposes has the misnomer, sorry, this skill is not registered for anything, is actually Crit Rise. Crit Rise essentially applies to basically any unit. So, how does it work? Okay, so what happens if I give... What happens if I... So, normally, 18 skill for Ike. What happens if I give him crit rise? 33! 33! If you give this to any unit, it raises their crit up to 15, basically. Well, I should be saying crit plus 10, but yeah. Anyway. You can give it to any other unit. But naturally, the skill is added on to the list of sword masters and archers, I believe. So yeah. But that's pretty much it for right now. Here's another dump for all the other skills, however. So, most of these are Japanese text, but right here. So, SID female. There are differences in female classes for this game specifically. In the next game, not so much. But in this game, female units have some advantages over male units, and vice versa. Number 3 is known as SID twice. Twice essentially is what I described before. It's basically Kanto for everybody. Fly is given to, well, flying units, especially Lagoos. They're given this ability as well. Village Destroy, assigned to bandits. However, Volk is also given this ability as well. SID Boss, which, given to bosses, prevents Roar and Lethality from being able to be triggered. SID Final, given to Ashnard, makes it so that it enables Gurgrot and disables experience points. I mean, because, well, final boss and everything. Animalize, assigned to Lagoos units. Lycanthrope, when transformed, this is what's given to them. Fixed Beast, given to feral ones, but in a way it's also given to the Demiband users, because it forces them to be transformed. Well, actually, transformed, Demiband and Lagoos Band are basically number 10. Number 15, W level up to S, which is apparently given the eternal name Big Magic, apparently. Impregnable, which, as we saw before, seems to be a big shield skill. Next we have Fly Through and Walk Through, which do nothing. But then we go to this section right here, which are talked about in Bigklingy's video, which are Chant, HP, Strength, Magic Power, Tech, which I believe is, I forget what it is, but Tech, Quick, Luck, Defense, Magic Defense, which is Resistance, and Equip Fang, which is not unused. Okay, so I need to go over this. Equip Fang is actually given to Leth, funny enough. It's actually given to Leth. It basically forces Lagoos units to be able to equip Fangs, essentially. It forces them to do it without needing to equip something else. Next up right here are what I like to call the paladin skills. As you can see right here, Knife and Lumina given to thieves and sages, 40 given to sages, 36 through 39 which are given to paladins. But if you give the axe ability to Ike, you can then transfer over the weapon ability for axes over to Ike in the path in the Radiant Dawn. And I've done this before, it's awesome. Anyway, Vantage, Nihil, Wrath. Now the interesting thing about cancel here is this. You think that Ether's the only skill that I can equip to him, but you'd be dead wrong. Yep, even I can use it. You can't teach it in the base, but if you utilize the debug menu, you can force units to outright have it in the long run. But like mentioned before, they're 20 capacity, so no use. The Japanese version, however, has a action replay code that forces the capacity to be 0. So for all intents and purposes, you can teach 6 skills in each unit if you wanted to. So yeah. Anyway. But the 50 capacity here is good for setups like this. .50 capacity is good for setups like that. And technically speaking, he can activate all of them at once. It has happened before. So, right down here we have SID Chaos, which does nothing, but Charm, which is given to bosses, but, and hilariously enough, you can give this to your units as well. It gives +5 hit and avoid to all allies within 3 spaces. In other words, if I give it to Ike, he can then use it and give it to his other units. Next up, we have Absolute Move and Confront. Now, if you've watched Bigklingy's video, you know that these do nothing as of right now. However, what I believe Confront might have been, it might have been something to do with cutscenes maybe, or something else. Then we have Evil Eye, which is unused now, but in the next game, it's Glare. Event CC, which, as I mentioned to you earlier, given to Ike, Volk, and Soth, and it prevents them from being able to class change unless you utilize the debug menu or that one code that removes it. Okay. Oh, hi there. Have a good one. Anyway, so continuing with this mess, we have 50 keys and Shoot. Now, what does Shoot do? Well, Shoot is amazing. So, when given to Oscar and any other unit, allows for any bow units to utilize ballista and longbows. So if I give it to Oscar and Boyd, they can utilize ballista and longbows, essentially. And it works because it's a bow animation and they can do it. So, right down here we have the 2 triangle attacks, which are given to the Pegasus Knights and the 3 brothers for their triangle attack. What's interesting about that is if I gave it to them right now, oh wait, no, it's the wrong one. It's 85 when given to Oscar, Boyd, and Rolf. Allow them to utilize the triangle attack. But you don't need to because the game forces them to have it later on in Chapter 19. So, Chapter 19, when Oscar, Boyd, and Rolf get the triangle attack, they can then utilize its abilities to utilize the triangle attack. But if you have all 3 of them in your squadron, you can activate it as early as Chapter 8, which is awesome. However, they do need to have the same type of weapon in order to utilize the triangle attack. But this is where the fun shit begins. Right down here. Equip A, Equip B, and Equip C. So 86, which allows Rolf to utilize his Rolf's Bow signature weapon. Equip B, which is given to Alencia to utilize Omni. But you can give it to every other unit so that they can use it too. Equip C, which is given to all the Royals so that they can utilize the Lagoose Band, which forces them to be transformed no matter what. And the next one is Temp on Die. Now, the wiki says it's assigned to Shinon. However, it's also assigned to Gatri. And I have a theory as to what is actually happening. So, in Chapter 7, or rather Chapter 8, Shin and Gatri leave the mercenaries. They're no longer part of your party. So what I think Temp on Die does, it basically makes it so that it's temporary on death. It basically forces them to be able to come back later on. It's basically skill 92 for them specifically. It could, that's what I think, especially in the case of Shinon, because if you recall, after Chapter 8, he goes to Dayan. So that's one thing. But over here we have Key 0, which is basically, it's given to Soph and any other thief. Allows you to freely open a door and other things too. But yeah, Key 0 essentially makes it so that you can freely open doors, chests, and I believe something else as well. But yeah, it's just doors and chests. It allows you to freely open doors and chests as Soph and any other thief. However, if you replace Volk's 50 key skill with this one, he'll still be able to open doors and whatnot. He just won't charge you 50 coins. Also, Immortal. Now this is given to Grail and Boyd, but essentially what it does is make it so that when someone is killed in battle, they don't die. You can give this to Ike to make sure that he never dies in the game, but it only works once if I recall. So, Equip D. Now this is given to soldiers, halberdiers, knights, generals, swords knights, and lance knights, axe knights, bow knights, and paladins. Basically anyone but foot soldiers. But essentially, it basically makes it so that they can utilize the Night Ward, like I showed off earlier. Boosts defense, boosts res, and increases speed growth over time. Then this, skill 94, which is equip Rev A. Now they say effect unknown, but I have a feeling as to why this is the case. It could be a racing-specific 92, where it basically makes it so that Racing doesn't actually die from the game, but it is retreatable. I don't know for sure, but it could also be something else, but anyway. Weak A. Assigned to Ashnard and Black Knight. Basically makes it so that any unit that utilizes that skill doesn't take any damage except from Ragnil and Lagu's Claws. Specifically, Lion Claws, Kilvoss's Beak, and Tibarn's Claw. And then we have Ahimsa, which I believe is based on a Buddhist concept, but essentially it's utilized for cutscenes. And Bigklingy talks about it in his video too. It essentially makes it so that when utilizing the skill, the Black Knight doesn't attack. It forces units to never attack back, essentially. Think Ward Fighter skill from Fire Emblem Heroes. So yeah. And like I told you before, 97 is Crit Rocks. It only exists in the US and European versions because it's basically just a buff for those units. They probably planned on doing this in the Japanese version, but didn't get around to it. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the skills portion. Now we do support. So, only in the debug menu, you can force every single unit to become an A rank and all the above. This is how you can get full data transfers over, or bond supports as you will. But yeah, that's pretty much it for right now. And now I'm actually going to show you the clear map. Right here. You can see it for yourself. It automatically clears the map. But yeah, that's it for right now. Here's the Japanese version. This is the Japanese version of the game. Now, the main thing to go over with the Japanese version is two functions. Right here. So, this is the event section. Now, according to Vincent ASM, the following 4 sections are labeled Flag Edit, View Registered Functions, Script Demo, and Message. This remains the only feature specific to the Japanese version that is tied in a section where you can see the flags, just like before. You can see all of these functions right here. Right here. It does nothing, but Script Demo crashes the game. It's a broken function, unfortunately, but that can be saved by this. So, the features that you see right here, however, are the exact same as the ones you see in the game. Namely, game settings... No, unit section, game settings, which only in Japanese version does Maniac actually mean something. Turn, enemy other and ally, turn, bonus experience, funds, total amount of the 2, map that we're currently on, level up, which in this case is random, and the amount of playthroughs you've been through. This is also tricky terrain, but like the original, it does nothing at all. This, of course, is Convoy, is indicated by the number 130. Then you got Bond, Log, and 2 other functions. So, according to that, we have right up here, Unit Largo, Status, Map and Chapter, Trick Terrain, No Roofs, Buildings, None, Convoy, All Units, which does nothing. It's basically unit list from the later games, from the other things. Bonds, Records, or in the localization Log, and then of course Map Clear. But here's something specific to this game as well. Unit. We got general doping, parameters, conditions, skills, weapon level and EXP, support edit, inventory, and interestingly enough, coordinates. Now, what does coordinates do? Takes you back to this menu right over here. So if I click on this unit, it makes the sub-menu, but when you click on this, it exits out and goes to this one. Now, Vincent and I theorized that maybe coordinates was specific to the Japanese version, because when utilizing the game or whatever, when utilizing the debug features or whatever, we found out that when you click on the Largo unit or whatever unit, it takes you back to this menu. They probably used it because they didn't want to keep pressing B all the time, so whenever they were working on items, they would just click on the exit menu when they were done with their shit. Anyway, so that's specific to the Japanese version, but here's some skills specific to the Japanese version. Now, as I mentioned right here, the skill list goes up to 96. That's because 97 wasn't utilized as a skill slot yet. But like I mentioned before, every other skill is available, including this. Unlike in the American version, all of these have names. So I guess they failed to write down the names correctly, or they just didn't want to. But yeah, here's the names of the skills for 79 to 77. Anyway, as you can see, you can force every unit to have an A rank in supports only in this version, basically. Well, not really this version, but whenever you utilize the debug menu, you can give every support A ranked, and you can give every weapon level S ranked, except for stabs. That's the only exception. However, let's say, for example, I were to hack this game and make it so Soren was a bishop instead of sage. Then I could essentially make it so that when Soren levels up into bishop, her staff and light level are essentially S ranked. And like mentioned before, you can give Lumina to sages. This is Mantle, this is Nihil, this is Adept, and this is Boon. But like I mentioned before, there's a code for the Japanese version, which makes it so that there's no capacity being taken. And as proof, here's Purge. This is basically Meteor for light magic users. Oh, and this is actually something interesting too. A nice shenanigan with action replays is that every item can technically be forged. This is Rexcalibur Forged. Every item can essentially be forged, but in Maniac mode specifically, she can get really hype. So that's why I forge everybody's weapon, but yeah. Anyway, that's enough of the Japanese version, however. So, with that, I'm just going to leave it as is and pretty much discuss everything as it is. So, without further ado, I hope everyone has a great day, and I hope this was enough to explain the full capacity of the debug menu. However, there is one thing that I do want to address that I didn't show off in there, and that was the sound test. So, the sound test, when you look through the BGM tracks, the most notable ones to go off of are the unused ones. And if you watch Bigklingy's video, you'll see all the tracks that are unused. Which, actually, there is one thing I do need to see, and that's to see if what I was able to do a while back actually worked. So, in case y'all are wondering, okay, you were saying modded. Here we go. So, alright, in the sound test, Here we go. Hey. Oh, right. In case you're wondering, joy. So, what I was hoping to do earlier was see if the debug menu would display a revision of the sound room so that I could basically have it so that those 3 songs would be lit up. But I wasn't able to pull it off, so never mind. But essentially, Buforce, Prague, and Ina are all legendary bosses. But if you look at right here, there's no Bryce here for unique themes. And this is where it gets interesting, because in the original game, the Japanese version of this game, they weren't the 4 riders. They were the 4 horsemen, which is a nod to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Dark Knight, Buforce, which I believe is Bertram, Prague, which is Petrine, and Ina, well, everybody knows Ina. But yeah, the reason why I thought it was kind of interesting was because when you have these 4 units right here, especially the Dark Knight, this implies that Ina was considered a 4th horseman up until this point. They decided to make it so that it was actually 4 horsemen, or 4 riders, and decided to go with the 4 people that are basically the close confidants of the king. This implies that Ina at some point was planned to be a true villain, up until they decided to give her more depth. Now this one's also interesting too. Event is Start. Start is Ashnar. No, it's not Ashnar, it's Ashura. That's what it is. Event Ashura implies that Ashura was going to become a major point in this part of the game. Now, this is game over 1. Separated 1. Now, this is where it gets interesting too. Coliseum info